Airlines don't just transport people, they also collect evidence in the form of complaints, real ones. And this video is a countdown of 49 of the weirdest passenger complaints airlines have ever received. Seatbelts that don't match, ice cubes with the wrong geometry, someone wanting a seance in the cabin, and other moments where adulthood clearly took the day off. 1. You have to admire the level of narcissism required to turn a safety regulation into a fashion emergency. A gentleman in business class wasn't concerned about the aircraft's maintenance or the turbulence ahead. He was spiraling because the standard industrial gray seatbelt clashed with his designer shirt. He didn't just pout about it, he demanded the crew provide a catalog of alternative belt colors so he could coordinate his outfit with his survival gear. Apparently, he expected the flight attendants to whip out a Pantone swatch book and reupholster the seat before takeoff, because God forbid he survives a crash while looking mismatched. 2. We all get annoyed when the cabin lights are too bright for a nap. But one man had a much darker reason for wanting total darkness. He filed an official corporate complaint because the crew refused to dim the lights for a surprise seance. He was dead serious about trying to contact his great-aunt Mildred at 35,000 feet, presumably because the reception to the afterlife is better in the stratosphere. When the flight attendants politely declined to turn the plane into a haunted house, he accused them of a shocking lack of spiritual open-mindedness, as if ghost hunting is a standard amenity right next to the complimentary pretzels. 3. Just when you think you've heard every entitlement story possible, along comes the woman who declared war on ice cubes. She submitted a multi-page handwritten manifesto because the ice in her gin and tonic was square, not spherical. Her argument was that the sharp, aggressive angles of the cubes ruined the drink's aesthetic and threw off the entire vibe of her beverage. She demanded the airline immediately implement a higher standard of frozen water geometry. I'm not sure what's worse: the fact that she cares this much about the shape of frozen water, or that she thinks a budget airline has an artisan mixologist hiding in the galley. 4. Fear of flying is normal, but fear of the plane hurting the cloud's feelings is a special kind of crazy. One passenger lodged a serious grievance claiming the airplane's wings were too pointy. He wasn't worried about drag or lift. He was convinced that the aggressive, angular design was sending a hostile message to the sky. His logic was that these sharp wings were insulting the clouds and might provoke bad weather out of pure spite. I'm no scientist, but I'm reasonably sure cumulonimbus clouds don't have an ego, and they certainly don't start thunderstorms just because they felt threatened by a Boeing 737 silhouette. 5. Noise complaints usually involve crying babies or loud talkers, not the musicality of a stranger's lungs. A flight attendant was forced to mediate a bizarre conflict when a woman insisted her seatmate was breathing in the wrong key. She claimed his inhalation and exhalation rhythm was clashing with the ambient hum of the jet engines, creating a deeply unsettling and dissonant sonic environment. Imagine being so high maintenance that you try to conduct the respiratory functions of the guy in 12B because he's flat relative to the turbine noise. I bet she's a blast at parties, provided everyone breathes in B-flat major. 6. The fold-down tray table is barely strong enough to support a laptop, yet one passenger treated it like a tournament-grade gaming surface. He was absolutely furious that the plastic table was horribly designed for a proper game of chess. He pointed out that the shallow indentation for the soda cup blocked key strategic squares, effectively ruining his grandmaster aspirations. He didn't just want a refund. He demanded that full-sized inlaid wood chessboards be installed at every seat for his convenience. Because obviously, when engineers design an aircraft, their top priority is ensuring the bishops and rooks have adequate maneuvering space during turbulence. 7. People expect a lot from pilots: safe landings, smooth flights, but one guy expected insider trading tips from the almighty. He filed a formal grievance because the captain didn't announce the winning lottery numbers during the descent. His reasoning? He believed that being 30,000 feet in the air gave the pilot a closer connection to the cosmos and better reception for divine signals. He accused the pilot of selfishly withholding this valuable data from the paying customers. Listen, buddy, If commercial pilots had the power to predict the Powerball, they wouldn't be flying you to Cleveland on a Tuesday afternoon. 8. Geography is clearly not a requirement for buying an airline ticket. On a purely domestic flight from Denver to Salt Lake City, a passenger became irate and filed a complaint because the pilot failed to point out the pyramids. He was genuinely expecting to see the Great Pyramid of Giza somewhere over the Rocky Mountains. He accused the crew of being lazy tour guides for missing the most famous landmark in the world, completely ignoring the fact that Egypt is about 7,000 miles and an entire ocean away. I guess he thought the airline just moves the continents around to make the window seat more interesting. 9. Most people just walk on the carpet, but one woman treated it like a psychological Rorschach test. She filed a serious complaint stating the abstract swirls on the cabin floor were far too chaotic for her liking. Her reasoning? She claimed the disorderly pattern was subliminally suggesting her vacation would be disorganized, effectively cursing her trip before the plane even took off. She actually demanded a full refund for the preemptive emotional damage caused by the upholstery. If you're letting industrial carpeting dictate your mental stability, you probably need a therapist more than a weekend getaway. 10. Safety protocols are strict for a reason, but one passenger wanted his own personal exit strategy. He lodged a formal complaint because the cabin crew denied his request for a preventative parachute. To be clear, he wasn't afraid of a crash. He just wanted the option to bail out midair if he disagreed with the quality of the pilot's landing. Apparently, he viewed the landing gear as a mere suggestion and wanted the freedom to skydive into the terminal if the approach felt a little bumpy. Imagine the chaos if everyone just pulled a ripcord whenever the service was too slow. 11. You know you have too much free time when you start critiquing airport abbreviations. One traveler took personal offense to the code displayed on the departure screen. He complained that LAX was a lazy and uninspired abbreviation for the City of Angels. He argued that the three-letter designation completely lacked the poetic grandeur Los Angeles deserved and demanded a rebrand. I'm not sure what he wanted. Maybe a haiku scrolling across the monitor? It's a logistical code, buddy, not a Shakespearean sonnet. Just be glad you aren't flying to Sioux City where the code is literally SUX. 12. People complain about legroom, but this guy complained about planetary physics. After staring out the window at 35,000 feet, he filed a formal grievance regarding the curvature of the Earth. He argued that the visible curve was subtle and underwhelming, and considering the price of his ticket, he expected a more pronounced and dramatic bend in the horizon. Essentially, he wanted the planet to reshape itself to make his view more cinematic. I didn't realize airlines were responsible for terraforming, but apparently this guy thought he paid for a window seat on the Death Star. 13. There are bad neighbors, and then there are imaginary villains. A complaint was actually filed against a fellow passenger for, and I really wish I was kidding, aggressive and overly rhythmic blinking. The accuser claimed that the man's steady metronome-like blinking pattern was a sophisticated attempt at hypnosis designed to steal his vacation ideas. Yes, he thought someone was using Morse code via eyelids to telepathically download his itinerary. If your vacation plans are so top secret that a stranger's blinking threatens them, maybe you should just stay in your bunker next time. 14. Airline food is usually criticized for being mushy, but one audiophile had the opposite problem. He submitted a formal grievance because the pre-packaged salad was offensively crunchy. He wasn't worried about his teeth. He complained that the sound of chewing the iceberg lettuce was interfering with his ability to listen to his quiet jazz playlist. He genuinely demanded that a softer vegetable option be made available for passengers who value acoustic purity over fiber. Next time, maybe just skip the salad and stick to the yogurt if you're trying to vibe to Miles Davis without percussion. 15. Most of us are happy when our snacks aren't crushed into dust, but happiness is subjective. A traveler complained because his bag of pretzels contained only perfect, unbroken knots. He argued that this perfection deprived him of the simple, satisfying challenge of hunting for and eating the broken little bits first. He essentially accused the airline of quality control that was too high. robbing him of his weird little snack ritual. It takes a special kind of misery to look at a pristine bag of food and say, "This is too good. I'm filing a report." 16. If your inner peace is shattered by a paper packet, you shouldn't be in public. One passenger caused a scene over a single packet of sugar for his coffee. He complained that the physical act of tearing it open was far too aggressive and completely disrupted the zen-like state he was trying to achieve before a business meeting. He wanted a silent, effortless sweetener delivery system, presumably telekinesis. If ripping a tiny paper sachet sends you into a spiritual crisis, I have bad news for you about how stressful that meeting is going to be. 17. We have another candidate for the Nobel Prize in Physics here. A passenger complained that the airline's claim of flying at the speed of sound was blatant false advertising. His proof? He claimed he could still hear the person snoring next to him, which, in his mind, proved they were traveling slower than sound itself. He genuinely thought breaking the sound barrier meant outrunning the noise inside the cabin. I guess he expected to leave the snoring guy's sound waves 3 miles back in Nebraska while he enjoyed silence in first class. 18. Life is full of hard choices, like buying a house or choosing a career. But for one woman, the snack cart was the breaking point. She complained that having to choose between sweet or salty snacks created unnecessary existential pressure. She argued that the airline should simply make the decision for her to avoid the mental anguish of picking peanuts over cookies. Imagine being a grown adult who crumbles under the weight of a binary snack decision. If she can't handle the pretzel dilemma, I'd hate to see her try to navigate a lunch buffet. 19. In-flight entertainment screens are great, until amateur navigators start interpreting the data. One passenger studied the flight path map and accused the pilot of being hopelessly lost. His evidence was that the plane was flying in a curved line rather than a straight one. He demanded the pilot stop taking the scenic route and fly more efficiently to save time. Someone needs to hand this guy a globe and explain that the Earth isn't a flat piece of paper. He probably thinks the pilot is just padding the meter like a dishonest taxi driver. 20. We all know airplane air is dry and recycled, but calling it a culinary disaster is a new level of snobbery. A passenger filed a formal grievance claiming the cabin air tasted stale and lacked freshness. He seriously suggested the airline install an air sommelier on every flight to curate a selection of vintage airs for the discerning traveler. Maybe he wanted a crisp 2023 Swiss Alps blend with notes of pine, or perhaps a heavy New York smog for a bolder finish. I'm not sure what he expected to breathe at 30,000 feet, but I doubt bottled Perrier is in the budget. 21. Pilots have a lot to focus on: navigation, weather, keeping the plane in the sky. But apparently they also need to be fashion critics. One man complained that during the captain's welcome announcement, the pilot failed to compliment his choice of sweater. He found this omission to be cold, dismissive, and deeply unprofessional. Never mind that the pilot is behind a reinforced steel door and literally cannot see the passengers. This guy needed his knitwear validated over the PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising at 35,000 feet, and shout out to the guy in 4C, that cashmere is fierce. 22. The standard brace position demonstrated during the safety briefing became a source of intense personal critique. A passenger complained that being instructed to lean forward and place his head against the seat was deeply unflattering. He claimed it forced him into a position that highlighted his double chin and would make him look absolutely ridiculous in his final moments. He genuinely suggested the airline design a more photogenic emergency posture, perhaps one that elongated the neck for a more dignified potential impact. 23. Flight attendants are busy people, usually rushing to get drinks served before turbulence hits. However, one attendant's efficiency was another man's meteorological nightmare. The passenger lodged an official complaint claiming her brisk pace down the aisle created a disruptive personal breeze. He insisted that the wind generated by her walking was repeatedly and intentionally messing up his carefully styled hair. I didn't know it was possible for a human being to generate max-speed wind just by delivering tomato juice, but apparently, his hair gel wasn't rated for that kind of aerodynamic turbulence. 24. Nature is beautiful unless you're an influencer with a specific aesthetic in mind. One woman looked out the window and decided the sky wasn't pulling its weight. She complained that the clouds were poorly arranged and lacked artistic composition. She seriously suggested the pilot take a detour to find a more aesthetically pleasing cloud formation so she could get the perfect shot for her social media. Imagine asking a pilot to burn thousands of dollars in jet fuel just because the cumulus clouds aren't fluffing up correctly for your Instagram story. 25. Reality is often disappointing, especially when you base your entire worldview on action movies. A passenger expressed major dissatisfaction with the iconic roar of the jet engines. He complained that it sounded nothing like it does in the movies, and accused the airline of cutting costs by using a cheaper, less impressive engine sound for his flight. He wanted that deep, cinematic Dolby surround sound rumble, not the high-pitched whine of actual turbine engineering. I guess next time the airline should hire a Foley artist to blast sound effects through the speakers just to keep him happy. 26. Simulation theory is a fun thought experiment, but this passenger took it way too literally. He filed a complaint stating that the captain's name, Captain Rogers, was the sole reason for his mid-air panic. He argued that the name was far too generic for a real pilot and sounded like a default character name in a flight simulator. This generic nomenclature made him question if the entire flight was real or just a glitch in the Matrix. Honestly, if your pilot is named Captain Rogers, you should feel safe. That's basically Captain America flying your plane. 27. Some people look for precision in engineering, others in shadows. A man identifying himself as an amateur aerial shadow photographer complained that the plane's shadow on the ground was unacceptably blurry. He claimed the fuzzy, indistinct edges ruined his composition as he tried to photograph it from the window. He then demanded the pilot change altitude to improve the sun's angle and create a crisper silhouette, as if the captain's job was to be his personal lighting technician. 28. We all hate waiting at the gate, but one passenger felt the boarding call was an existential attack. He complained that the call for Zone 4 was delivered with a shocking lack of urgency. He claimed the gate agent's monotone voice was so demotivating that it made him briefly question his entire life's purpose before he could muster the strength to stand up. He didn't want a boarding announcement. He wanted a hype man. Unless the gate agent screams, "Let's get ready to board!" like a wrestling announcer, this guy just isn't feeling the vibe. 29. Paranoia in a metal tube is never a good mix. A man filed a formal complaint because a flight attendant made direct and prolonged eye contact with him while walking down the aisle. He wasn't flattered or awkward. He was convinced she was trying to read his thoughts to steal his business secrets. Because, obviously, corporate espionage is best conducted by flight crews scanning the brains of economy passengers between beverage services. If your business secrets are that easily accessible via eye contact, you probably shouldn't be traveling in public at all. 30. The safety briefing's use of the word vest instead of life jacket deeply troubled one woman. Her official complaint wasn't just about semantics. She claimed to have a deeply traumatic childhood experience involving a puffy sweater vest at a school spelling bee. Hearing the word vest, she argued, triggered her anxiety and made her unable to focus on the emergency instructions. She demanded the crew use the full term personal flotation device for the rest of the flight to accommodate her unique psychological needs. 31. Taking things literally is a dangerous game. Upon landing, a passenger was genuinely outraged that the captain thanked everyone for flying with this airline. He argued that since he was merely sitting in a chair and the plane was doing all the mechanical work, the thanks were misdirected and factually inaccurate. He claimed he didn't fly anything, he just sat there as cargo. I bet this is the same guy who corrects people when they say, "drive safe," because technically the car does the driving. Just take the compliment and get off the plane, buddy. 32. Emergency signage is designed to be universal and urgent, but one passenger found it too stressful. He criticized the standard running man exit sign, arguing that the icon looked needlessly panicked. He suggested replacing it with a picture of a man casually strolling towards the exit with a cocktail to promote a sense of calm. Because in the event of a fiery crash, the one thing you want is people sauntering down the aisle like they're at a beach resort, holding up the evacuation line to finish their martinis. 33. Time is relative, but not for this chronologically rigid traveler. A man complained that the flight attendant wishing him a good morning at 11:30 a.m. was chronologically inaccurate. He insisted that since it was practically lunchtime, the greeting warranted an official apology for temporal misconduct. He even suggested the staff carry synchronized watches to avoid such grievous errors in the future. Imagine having a day so void of problems that being wished a good morning 30 minutes too late ruins your entire disposition. 34. You have to feel for the pets traveling in cargo, but sometimes the owners are the ones imagining the drama. A passenger filed a formal complaint alleging that the specific squeak of the beverage cart's wheel was causing his pet hamster, located deep in the cargo hold, extreme emotional trauma. He claimed he could sense the animal's anxiety through the floorboards. Unless that hamster has bionic hearing and the owner has a telepathic link with rodents, I'm pretty sure the only one suffering from anxiety caused by the squeaky wheel was the guy in seat 12A. 35. Traveling with pets can be stressful, but projecting your own insecurities onto an animal is a whole different level of dysfunction. A passenger traveling with her dog in a carrier filed a serious complaint because the airline failed to provide a dedicated, dog-friendly lavatory. She was genuinely concerned that her prized poodle was holding it in and silently judging her for the entire 7-hour flight. I'm not sure what she expected. A fire hydrant installed in the galley? If she thinks her dog is judging her bladder management skills, I think she needs a therapist more than she needs a pet relief station at 30,000 feet. Yours, 36. You hear a lot of weird things about airplane water, but this one takes the cake for pseudoscience. A passenger complained that the water used for his tea was left-handed water. He claimed that when he flushed the toilet, the water spun in the wrong direction, proving the onboard supply was fundamentally incompatible with his right-handed digestive system. He was convinced that drinking this backwards water would ruin his internal alignment. I guess he forgot that the Coriolis effect doesn't apply to a cup of Earl Grey. Or maybe he just needs to fly south of the equator to get the swirl he likes. 37. The safety card in the seatback pocket is usually ignored, but one passenger analyzed it like an art critic. He was deeply offended by the little illustrated man on the card, claiming the character's facial expression was unrealistically smug. He felt that this cartoon smirk set a dangerous and arrogant precedent for surviving a water landing, as if the drawing was mocking his fear of drowning. Imagine being so insecure that a stick figure with a life vest makes you feel judged. If the plane is going down, I promise you won't be worried about the attitude of the instruction manual. 38. We all want our vacations to start the moment we land, but this guy had some very specific climate control requirements. Stepping off the plane into a tropical paradise was, for him, a horrifying experience. He lodged a complaint that the airline failed to pre-warm the jet bridge, forcing him into a shockingly abrupt temperature change, rather than a gentle, curated transition. He expected the airport to provide a thermal airlock to ease him into the humidity, because apparently, sweating like a normal person was not part of his itinerary. 39. Airline food is an easy target, but usually, the complaints are about taste, not personality. Upon receiving his meal, a man complained that his chicken was looking at him funny. He insisted the poultry's posture on the plate was judgmental and that it was making him too self-conscious to eat it. He actually demanded the flight attendant replace it with a more respectful-looking piece of chicken. I have so many questions, but mostly I want to know what kind of guilt this guy is carrying around that even a dead, breaded cutlet makes him feel inadequate. 40. Modern travel can be existential, but usually not because of the electronics. The call button sound was the source of one person's deep philosophical crisis. They complained that its cheerful ding was too flippant for potentially serious requests. They argued that there should be a separate, more somber button for existential dread or a beverage, distinct from the happy chime. Because when you're panic ordering a double whiskey at altitude, you want the sound effects to match the darkness in your soul, not sound like a convenience store doorbell. 41. First impressions are everything, but judging a pilot's competency by his skincare routine is a stretch. After shaking the captain's hand while boarding, one woman filed a formal grievance. She claimed his hands were clearly not a pilot's hands, because they lacked the delicate yet firm grip she had envisioned. She spent the entire flight questioning his credentials based purely on his manicure, convinced that soft hands couldn't possibly handle a landing. Lady, he's flying a computer with wings, not wrestling a bear. He doesn't need calluses to get you to Chicago. 42. Panic in the skies is contagious, especially when it's based on total ignorance. The sight of the plane's own wing prompted a frantic push of the call button from one terrified passenger. He alerted the crew that a large, unidentified metal object appeared to be stuck to the side of the plane and had been following them since takeoff. The flight attendant had to gently explain that the object was, in fact, the wing, and it was the only thing keeping them from plummeting into the ocean. It's comforting to know the guy next to you doesn't know what an airplane looks like. 43. If you travel far enough, things should look different, right? That was the logic behind this celestial complaint. A grievance was filed because the moon, visible from the plane window, appeared to be the exact same moon the passenger had seen from his backyard just last week. He was deeply disappointed that the airline hadn't arranged for a different, more exotic moon for his international trip. He genuinely seemed to believe that for the price of a business class ticket, the airline should be able to fly him to a different solar system entirely. 44. Superstition is common, but numerology at the boarding gate is a hassle for everyone. A man holding a ticket for seat 13A caused a massive scene, refusing to sit down. His reason wasn't just the number 13. He claimed that the digits 1 and 3 were mathematically incompatible with his personal numerology. He insisted that sitting there would severely disrupt his karma and align his chakras with disaster. The gate agent eventually had to move him, presumably to a seat where the numbers added up to shut up and sit down. 45. Conspiracy theorists see patterns everywhere, even in the cockpit personnel. After hearing the captain introduce his co-pilot over the intercom, one passenger immediately suspected a deep-seated conspiracy. He filed a report on potential nepotism in the cockpit simply because both pilots had a similar regional accent. To him, the odds of two people from the same area flying a plane together were far too unlikely to be a coincidence. He spent the flight convinced it was a family plot to take over the aircraft, rather than just two guys from Boston doing their jobs. 46. In a stunning display of not understanding the basic principles of aviation, a passenger complained the engines were too noisy. He wasn't asking for earplugs. He had a helpful technical suggestion for the crew. He told them to just find the volume knob for the jet engines and turn them down a bit, so he could hear the dialogue in his movie better. Because obviously the pilots are just blasting the turbine noise for fun, and sacrificing thrust and altitude is a totally reasonable trade-off for catching the plot of a rom-com. 47. The classic chicken or fish question led to a complaint that belongs in a philosophy textbook. A man who ordered the chicken later griped that the service was incomplete because he was never informed of the chicken's name. He wanted to know its life story, its background, and what its hopes and dreams had been before it ended up on his tray. He felt that eating an anonymous bird was disrespectful to its memory. Unless the airline starts handing out obituaries with the napkins, I don't think this guy is ever going to be satisfied with economy class dining. 48. Some people treat their travel like a movie, and this woman was the director. Her complaint focused on the lack of narrative arc in the flight path shown on the screen. After watching the map, she argued the journey was dramatically unsatisfying, claiming it lacked a clear beginning, middle, and climactic end. She suggested a more story-driven route next time, perhaps with a loop-de-loop for dramatic tension. I'm not sure she understands that the goal of a flight is a boring straight line, not a hero's journey through the atmosphere. 49. You'd think the safety briefing is pretty straightforward. Buckle up, don't die. But everyone's a critic. One person filed a formal complaint that the demonstration wasn't artistically engaging enough. He claimed the flight attendants lacked dramatic flair and that the presentation was, therefore, an ineffective piece of performance art. He wanted emotion. He wanted pathos. He wanted the oxygen mask demo to make him feel something deep inside. Next time, maybe the crew can perform the safety briefing as an interpretive dance just to keep him entertained while the plane taxis. All right, pick your fighter. Which complaint in this video is the most unforgivable? And which one do you secretly understand a little? Be honest. Drop the number and defend it like you're writing to the airline's CEO. Like the video if you enjoy human chaos at cruising altitude and subscribe, because I've got more proof that the sky is not the limit, it's the problem.